welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending March 17th. We have a big show tonight. We've got William Bernanke from CG Analytics. He's going to join us to talk about March Madness Conference Tournament Week. This is a tough week for everyone. It's a busy week. We'll ask him how he's handling it and where the money's going. And we'll have another edition of Handicapper's Corner. Ralph Michaels is joining me in studio this week. Dave Cokin has the week off. We've got Mark Seidel behind the controls. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. Let's get the party started. And before we bring in Will, I want to tell you guys we've got a special offer this week at WagerTalk. It's March Madness time. If you wanted to buy the March Madness package, the price is $275. That's what everybody else is paying. But if you want to pick your favorite capper and get all of his plays right through the championship game, all college basketball plays, pick them, use coupon code MM100, take $100 off. We're giving you that bonus just for listening to the podcast. Once again, MM100, get the March Madness package from your favorite capper, $175.
Well, you know, one thing I want to bring up before we get into our lines of questions here is I'm always interested in volume that you guys do. Now, you know, there are more games this week in conference tournaments, many more games put up, you know, with back-to-back days, 4 games in 4 days or 5 games in 5 days for some teams. The volume this week, how does it compare to the volume next week? And I know it's just going to be a guess off the top of your head, but I know next week there's a lot of people that come in town and people tend to bet more. Or is the volume close this week because there's more games, and does it equal the fewer games of March Madness?
Oh, I mean, I don't. It's not even close. The volume next week will just blow it away. Okay. You know, this week it's nice. It'll pick up as the bigger conferences get closer to their final games, and they have some of the bigger name schools involved. But right now, it's pretty fairly slow, and I think it starts to pick up Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and you'll see. I can't give you really an estimate. Maybe a fraction, a third of what we'll see next week.
Yeah, I want to let our listeners know that you can follow Will at the Moneyline Guy on Twitter. Be sure to check him out. He's got a lot of useful information, and he is the manager at CG Analytics. Will, this is a crazy week. This is like no other week of the season in college basketball. You're going to have conference tournament week. You've got teams that possibly can play 4 games in 4 days. How hard is it for the books? Because you've got to do this on the fly. You play the games today. You win, you advance. You guys don't know who's advancing. We don't know who's advancing. And then you've got to put those numbers, turn around 12 hours later, and have numbers up for people to bet in. How hard is that for you guys doing March Madness, the conference tournament week?
I mean, it could be a challenge, guys. But taking into account, a team's depth, the difficulty of their last game, which, kind of create perception depending on how, if they blew them out or went, an overtime or multiple overtimes, and certainly coaching, we feel we can nail these numbers pretty good. We have a lot of data from the season, so that really helps with a good baseline. And putting those numbers out is so helpful. We don't feel rushed where we have to put them out overnight. As if you notice, a lot of these numbers will pop up in the morning, and we don't have any, rushed feeling, so to speak.
You brought up my question, Will, talking about a team off a blow-off, perhaps against a team that played a very close game or an overtime game and now playing the next day. Do you guys handicap the lines differently and perhaps tweak them a half a point because the public overreacts to what have you done for me lately or what happened most recently?
Sometimes, if you're dealing with a high-profile school and or a conference, that would certainly apply. When it's a mid-major, there are times we don't want to overreact to that and just kind of use some common sense with it. But certainly with the bigger name schools, we can add a tax in there without any issues for ourselves.
Just a further note on that, I remember several years ago, back in the old Big East, remember that 6 overtime game? It was Syracuse and somebody. I forget who they played. And everybody and their brother the next day is like, well, you got to go get something. Played a 6 overtime game, and the line showed it. There was a little inflation in the number. And Syracuse got the money anyways.
Yep. Yeah, 30 extra minutes. It was like an extra half of basketball, just over an extra half. Not that much.
But the public, everybody flies on the same comment. Oh, my God, there's nothing left. They forget. Do you remember the things you could do when you were 20, 22 compared to now? So that wasn't a problem. When we get to the conference championship games, if one team played 4 games and the other played just 3 because they had a bye game, do you factor anything in for the perceived advantage it has with the team that played the less games?
Yeah, definitely. The other thing was UConn, and adrenaline is a wonderful thing to, finish off that big 6 overtime game. But we definitely apply this to the spread. Especially if there's a big difference in depth in those 2 teams and coaching. Coaching could affect the rotations, which leads to players getting too many or the wrong minutes, so to speak, and that could, really have fatigue set in earlier than it should be in a certain scenario.
Ultimately the market decides where the line should go, with the money bet, but are you quicker to move a number in a conference tournament based on an opening bets from some sharp players because they may have some knowledge that skip by, especially when teams play the night before and then play the next day? Or, is it the same as a regular season game? You guys trust what your knowledge is or your research you did?
Well, not necessarily, because, to the other point, there's a couple spots earlier, we have plenty of data on these schools and even the venues that they're playing at. It's not like some of these, some of the venues we've never seen before. They haven't been used. Most of them, if not all, have been used at some point during the season. So if any type of shooting issues or lighting issues at the place, even that Murray State-Belmont game where some players were slipping on the court, I know it didn't affect really the point spread or total, but things of that nature, we're aware of that. So there's no real surprises at this point when it comes to power rankings or any of those other variables.
Moving to the actual conference action, and we're going to talk about the big conferences. Will, do you have any money? We'll just go down the list with them and start with the Big Ten. We know Michigan State's the favorite. Are you getting any money on any sleepers there to take that?
Well, the sleeper, I wouldn't call it a sleeper, so to speak, but we're seeing some sharp action on Wisconsin at 6-1. So there are, underdog of choice in the Big Ten right now, but most of the action is on Michigan at 2-1 and Purdue at plus 180. Michigan State, I do expect some Michigan State money to come in at some point. They're $1.25 favorite to win the conference tournament, but we haven't seen it yet, but I expect it to come in soon.
Moving to the Big 12, for the first time in forever, Kansas did not win the Big 12. They're not the favorite either here in the conference tournament. Texas Tech is the team on top. Is all the money on Texas Tech, or are you getting some sleeper action?
Well, the money so far has been on Iowa State at plus 300. Of course, we have our loyal Kansas backers at plus 225. And Texas Tech is seeing as much action as those two at plus 150. And we're seeing some sharp action on the field, believe it or not, at plus 350. So that's a decent play. We get teams in the mix there, Baylor and Oklahoma, teams that could make a run out of the blue.
Yeah, I just want to let our listeners know, were you saying that you were getting some sharp action on Iowa State on our radio show today from another sports book here in town? They told me the same thing, Will, some sharp money on this Iowa State team. And they were a team, Will, that I was high on a month ago. Mid-February, I thought that this was a team that could win the Big 12 and, make some noise in the tournament. And then they limped to the finish line with their last few games, and yet people are jumping on them thinking they're going to regain that form. And if they do, this is a team that there is some value with them at the number that they are. I should say were. Some of the value definitely gone now with the action coming in on them. Let's go to the Big East. In Villanova, they didn't start the season out as a powerhouse. They had to do some reloading. I don't want to use the word rebuilding because the big programs don't rebuild. They just reload. And Villanova's, over their success over the last several years is now, becoming one of those premier teams. They played super down the stretch, and this is a team that got back to the Big East title. They're the favorite, but, I think that there's some teams here that can make some noise. We know Marquette is a team that played well all season long, just couldn't get the job done against Villanova. Is there anybody else in the Big East that you're getting some sharp action on?
Yeah, we're just one team of note is St. John's. Seeing some sharp action at 7-1. I think that has to do with being at Madison Square Garden, and also Pons being one of the best players in the conference, a guy capable of carrying a team for multiple games. So it kind of makes sense for people to look at St. John's there. And the action, of course, is on Villanova at plus 150. Some solid action on them, but otherwise nothing else. It's been kind of slow with the Big East so far.
How about the SEC? It's been Kentucky, seems like year after year, and Calipari once again, has a season. He has to rebuild every year, and the teams always get better as the season goes on. But I got to tell you, this Kentucky team this year, they gelled quicker, I think, than any of the Kentucky teams of the last several years. And they're a powerhouse going in. I know it was Kentucky and Tennessee all year. Does Kentucky come out of here? And Calipari's a guy that does like to win these conference tournaments. He's been there 3 years in a row. Does he make it 4?
Well, when it comes to Kentucky, we're seeing very, very little action on them, which is surprising. As well as they played, maybe this is their year to catch everybody off guard, because just hasn't been much action on them. The favorite is Tennessee, seeing a little bit of action on them at plus 150. There's action on LSU at plus 400 and Auburn at plus 500. Public action. We haven't seen any sharp action yet in the SEC whatsoever, so I'm waiting on that. So those 3 teams right there.
All right, and the last one I have is, of course, the ACC. Duke, this is a team without the injuries, would have been the overwhelming favorite because of the injuries. You got Virginia there, but, they've got that stigma, of course, of losing the opening round game last year in the NCAA tournament. I don't think anybody's going to ever let them forget that. Only team to lose to a 16 seed. Where is the money at, and where is a sleeper, if you have any?
Yeah, Virginia's the favorite at $1.20. Not seeing much action on them so far, so I can expect that line to maybe move a little bit to try to get some. But Duke at plus 130 is seeing action, of course, now that with Zion expected back. North Carolina at 280 is seeing action as well for obvious reasons. And the sharp action has been on the field at 6-1. Which including, some of the teams that aren't listed in the conference there, NC State and Virginia Tech is listed, so they wouldn't be in the field. But off the top of my Clemson, teams like that could make a run out of the blue.
All right, good stuff. Will, what's happening at CG this week other than you putting in a lot of long hours?
Yeah, that's for sure. All new accounts, as everyone knows, should know, all new accounts get up to $68 sign-up bonus right on through March Madness, right on through the Final Four. So make sure you download the app and go to your nearest CG book so you can sign up for an account and get your free money, and you can have the necessary tools to bet like a pro. And also, you can watch the tournament at the Cosmopolitan Hoops and Hops. Passes are available for all the days or individual days, so you can lock up your spot there as soon as possible so you can experience March Madness like you never have before. So you can have the combination of 2, free money on your app, get down to, sign up for your account, get down to Hoops and Hops so you can watch the game and basically pay for it yourself with the free money.
Good stuff, Will, and the Cosmo is definitely a happening place on the Strip. Your sports book is the only sports book on the Strip that you can literally walk in the front door off the Strip and you are in the sports book. Very convenient and really a fun place to be. Check that out at the Cosmo. And Will, as always, thanks for stopping by. We had to change the schedule this week, and I thank you for doing that as we were taping early. And hopefully you'll be available again next week on Tuesday as we're going to air our podcast again a couple days early, obviously, with all of the action happening on Thursday and Friday. No sense doing a podcast on Thursday. We want to get it up there and out there to our listeners. So I appreciate you being accommodating. Hopefully we'll talk to you next week. And we're going to cut out for a quick break. When we return, Ralph and myself, we are going to go to Handicapper's Corner. You got the odds on all of these conferences. We're going to tell you what we think is going to happen and who we like in these conferences to win. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the Wager Talk Podcast. We're going to head to Handicapper's Corner. And, well, Ralph, there's only one thing to talk about in Handicapper's Corner this week, and that is conference tournament action. And we've got all the big tournaments, the big conferences. But, Ralph, there's a couple of unique situations this year. Not all the tournaments are set up the same. And there's one that it absolutely boggled my mind all season the way they did things, and that was the Sun Belt Conference. Tell us what they did and how they set up this conference tournament and what they're trying to do.
Well, the Horizon a few years ago was really the first. They set it up where the 1 and 2 seed got a double bye. They basically wanted their best team to make it to the NCAA tournament, so they gave them a big advantage. Well, the Sun Belt completely restructured not only how they schedule, but their tournament. Their scheduling, they went to a 20-game schedule. After the first 16 games, they were basically seeded into pods. Teams 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 5 through 7, and 8 through 10. And then you played those teams again. So if you were a 1, 2, or 3 seed, you knew you were going to finish as a 1, 2, or 3 seed, and you played the last 3 games of the season against the other 1, 2, or 3 seeds. Now, one thing just to be careful with, when you're looking at those Sun Belt teams moving forward, you can't really compare conference stats. Every other conference, you can look at it, compare conference stats. But because of the disparity of the strength of schedule now, those bottom teams played 4 extra games against bottom tiers. The top teams played 4 extra games against the top tier teams. Those conference stats may be skewed. But as we're moving to the conference tournaments, they have it set up where the 8-9 and the 7-10 play each other in the home settings. Those are as we're recording on Wednesday. Then when they move to New Orleans, they only play 2 games a night. So the 5 and 6 teams get a bye. The 4 and 3 seeds get a double bye. The 1 and 2 seeds get a triple bye. So if a team that played tonight makes it to the finals, they'll be playing a 5th game in 6 days. If the number 1 or 2 seed make it to the finals, they'll be playing only their 2nd game in those same 6 days. Some other tournaments have byes and double byes, so always be careful. 1 day rest doesn't make a difference, but you have a team with multiple games under the belt against a fresh team, you can get some value.
All right, that's good stuff there, and we're going to break down the big conferences for you. Just going to run through them. Taking a look at what the future prices is to actually win the conference tournament. And, Ralph, we're going to start in the ACC. And, of course, Virginia is the favorite. And we're looking at Virginia. If you want to take Virginia for the ACC crown, going to bet 100 and you're going to win 120. Now, a couple weeks ago, Duke would have been the favorite here. But because of the injury to Zion, they dropped there. Is there value in taking Virginia in this, or do you see a sleeper that you like in the ACC?
Well, at even money, here's the ironic thing, Marco. Duke is still the massive favorite to win the national championship. They've been all year. Coach K doesn't care about winning the ACC. There are certain coaches that don't care if they win the ACC or not. That's why Duke is not the favorite. If Coach K were like Kentucky with Coach Calipari, who has gone to, I think, 7 or 8 SEC championship games, they would be a massive favorite. But since he doesn't care, I don't think there's value with Virginia. They won the tournament last year. They're the favorite. I mean, Duke is 7-4, North Carolina 7-2. Virginia Tech 12-1, Florida State 15-1, Louisville at 30-1 is a team where I would think they have a good enough offense, they have a good enough defense. Remember, they had to learn new systems this year under Chris Mack, the Xavier head coach who now took them over. They're a team that I have circled that I think really could do something down the stretch. As far as Duke's concerned, listen, they're a 1 or a 2 seed. All they care is getting Zion healthy for next Thursday or Friday. And even then, they're probably only really worried to have him back Saturday or Sunday, no matter who they're playing. So I could see Duke getting knocked out very early, perhaps against Syracuse.
Do you see them using Zion in the ACC tournament at all?
If they want to give him a few minutes just to get the rust off, because then that'll allow them to prep for their teams this weekend, without having rust. So if they think he needs it, if he wants to play, if Coach K thinks it needs to keep him motivated by giving him a few minutes, then you may see him. But I don't think you're going to have any noticeable minutes. You know, one thing to remember when you're looking at these conferences, like the ACC, you have NC State and Clemson that are on the bubble. Now, the ACC is such a strong conference. NC State is 21-10. Ken Pom has them 30. The net has them high 30s. I think they're in. Clemson's the one that Ken Pom has 28. The net has them about 35. Clemson is the one that's going to be playing with pressure early. They need to get at least 1 or 2 wins under their belt to get them to the 20-win mark or more to be able to push them over, over the bubble. No surprises the first 2 games as we're recording. Miami beats Wake Forest. Notre Dame beats Georgia Tech. Pitt and Boston College are tonight. So, to me, Duke is playing the poorest. I would not bet on Duke at all in the conference tournament. VT's also struggling going in. I think the team playing best right now, is North Carolina, obviously, the way they're playing. But Florida State and Louisville, to me, have some value as some long shots.
For my long shot, I'm going to go to Virginia Tech, and I know down the stretch they didn't play as well as they were playing earlier. This is a team that beat Duke on their home floor. They, played Virginia. This is the only team coming into this year that had beaten Virginia each of the last 2 years. I think their defense makes them dangerous, and like you said, the ACC with all these heavyweights, do you really, want to knock heads and wear your team out before the big dance, because you're going to be seated where you're seated anyways. I think that if you want to look for value, my team in the ACC is Virginia Tech. Let's move over to, let's go to one of the former heavyweights. And man, I miss the old days of this conference, Ralph, and that is the Big East. You look at the Big East with the teams that we have there, and this is a team, Villanova, that at the beginning of the season they had to replace a lot of people. But as the season progressed down the stretch, they were the team that was playing the best and come out again. And here they are, the favorite. You're getting plus 200. At least the favorite here is a little bit higher than it was in the ACC. The second choice is Marquette at plus 250. Marquette is a team that's been consistent all year, just couldn't get that big matchup against Villanova. And then the surprise team, Creighton. Remember, I think of Creighton, I still think of them, it is the Missouri Valley Conference days, them in Wichita State, battling it out every year.
And Northern Iowa back then was,
But now in the Big East, they're making their presence felt. They are the third choice at 5-1. Is Villanova the team to beat? Do they extend the energy? I tell you what, the old Big East tournaments, I really used to think when they, Pitt, Syracuse, all those teams, West Virginia and that, I just thought they used to beat each other up.
Syracuse,
and then when
Georgetown were brawls.
Yeah, and then when you got to the, the big dance, your team was wore out. These teams a little bit different now in the Big East. Who do you like here? Where's the value?
Well, the difference this year is, yes, Villanova is the best team in the conference, but top to bottom, my power only ratings have them 10 points different from Villanova to DePaul. That's it. So from top to bottom, you only have a 10 gap. That to me means it's wide open. I will say that, Marquette, played incredibly well, lost those last 4 games. That Villanova loss when they were close and they went to Villanova and lost and followed it up with a loss to Creighton at home and then lost to Seton Hall and Georgetown, that concerns me because you have a great offensive team, a team that was playing good defense but didn't finish down the stretch. To me, it's a team that, we just talked about this head coach who left, and it's Xavier. I think Xavier's played as well as anyone down the stretch. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. And they're also in a very they're in a situation where they're going to play Creighton and Villanova. That's the negative. If you're on the other side of the bracket and the top 2 teams are Marquette and Seton Hall, it's much easier to come out of it. So they're going to be tested early. That's the negative. Couple notes about teams in this conference. You have Seton Hall, who has 18 wins, and has taken care of Marquette and Villanova. You have St. John's with 20 wins playing at home. They've played so poorly down the stretch that I've taken them off. But think about St. John's in Madison Square Garden. You have 20 wins, and you have 3 wins against Marquette and Villanova this year. That makes you have to put them in your mix. And the one thing I will say about Creighton, and a lot of people have bet Creighton up and the odds have come down on Creighton, the only tournament team they beat their entire schedule, they beat Marquette once. That'll be the only team that made the tournament out of their entire wins, their body of work. To me, that's something that you have to be concerned about. One scheduling note in the Big East. Providence and Butler are the 8 and 9 seeds. They play at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. The winner of that game has to play Villanova at noon on Thursday. Obviously a big disadvantage. We talked about it off the air. Playing back-to-back games isn't the worst thing when you have a team that's motivated and ready to play. But when you have to play at 7 o'clock and you're ending at 9 o'clock and then you're back there at 9 in the morning to get ready for a noon game, that's a different story. So, I think that Providence-Butler situation puts Villanova in a great spot. And the last thing about the conference, Butler is a 9 seed, but in my power ratings, they are basically tied for 5th as far as power rating goes. So don't be over infatuated with a seeding and you see, well, this team's a 9 seed. There's no way they can beat a 5 seed. Look at what the power ratings are, and you'll be surprised how close sometimes they are. Sometimes they're far away, but in this instance, Creighton to Xavier is basically, I actually have, Butler to Xavier or Creighton, only a few points separate him in the power ratings from a 4 to a 9 seed.
My team that I'm going to look here is Villanova's the favorite, but I just don't think they come out of here with this one. I'm going to go to Creighton. It's been a few years now they've been in this conference. They finished the season winning 5 in a row, and before that they had lost 4 in a row, but 2 of those losses were in overtime to Villanova and Xavier. This is a team I think that's played much better down the stretch. I think they can make some noise here and go on a deep run. I'm going to go with Creighton for my long shot in the Big East. Let's head to the Big Ten and take a look there. Obviously, the favorite in the Big Ten is Michigan State. Do they warrant being the big favorite in the Big Ten?
Oh, yeah. Been there, done that, have the experience. It's they're not a huge favorite. Obviously, you have a 3-headed monster with Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue. Michigan, the number 2 team, around 9-4. Purdue at 5-2, and then Wisconsin 6-1. I think I think the negative for Michigan and Michigan State is they just finished the regular season battling each other twice in a week and a half. That's going to take a lot out of you playing into this scenario. I think that Purdue right now is playing the best ball for me. They're the 3rd favorite. They're playing well down the stretch. They have the go-to scorer in Edwards. You're going to play you're going to play a very hot, probable Penn State team moving forward. But then you got the Michigan battle. So, the Big Ten beats each other up in these conferences, but they seem to give the effort and want to win it. I will go with the Boilermakers and take the 2 seed and the number 3 overall favorite in the conference.
You mentioned a team there in passing, and we got to talk about them. Penn State went deep into the conference schedule before they won a game. They didn't win a conference game until February 4th. And since then, Ralph, they played great basketball down the stretch, winning 2, 5, 7 of their last 10 games. In the 3 losses, a 4-point loss to Ohio State. They lose to Purdue. They did lose that one by 12.
On the road, though.
On the road. And then they played on the road. They lose by 4 to a Wisconsin team. This is a team that if I'm a Big Ten opponent right now, I don't want to draw Penn State. They're a big number. Do you see them? Can they go anywhere in this?
I besides Texas Tech, I think Penn State's playing as good as ball as anyone in the country. It is just crazy. They have a underclassman in the backcourt with a sophomore point guard and a freshman shooting guard, and they're just relaxed. We thought we might see Pat Chambers get fired midseason. It was like you said, they were 7-14. They were 0-10 in the Big Ten. Expect nothing of them. They go to Northwestern. It turns the corner. I just think that right now they're playing loose. They have nothing to lose. They're 14-17. They're on an ATS run. They're a team that I will certainly be on, but I don't think they have enough to beat Minnesota and then be able to knock off Purdue, and then if they beat Purdue, to beat Michigan. So a team that I think will cover, get there, finish winning money, but not good enough to pull the upset.
Now, sitting at 40-1, would you say if you wanted to take a flyer, would it be better to do a money line parlay and just keep, start out, if you wanted to bet $100 on Penn State, take the $100, roll it over. I mean, the first game, it's a toss-up. But then the second game, they're going to be a big money line dog to Purdue, and if they get that one, then you're rolling into the third one.
Well, you're going to be a 10-point. You're going to be a double-digit dog 3 straight games against Purdue, against Michigan, and against the other bracket. So so what's money line? 10-point money line.
Yeah, rolling it over. I think you would actually get more than 40.
Yeah.
And if you wanted. When you got that to that last one, instead of rolling the money line, you're going to be getting a big plus on the thing. You could just, bet them plus the points if you wanted to do that.
You also split it up. If you do get a money line and then you roll it over, take back your monies, go back in and play with house money from then on and see what you can get. Like I said, I'm very impressed with the way they played, but you do have to remember, when a team is 0-10 in conference play and they're coming into your venue, you don't get the same effort. Now they've knocked off those opponents, but even in the wins, the only top team they beat was Michigan. The other wins are Northwestern, Nebraska, Illinois, Maryland, Rutgers, Illinois again. So they beat the bottom half of the bracket to get to that run. To beat the top bracket multiple games in a row, I just don't see it.
All right, let's go to where I feel is the best conference in college basketball. And
the Pac-12?
Yeah. You had the 12 right. Let's go with the Big 12. And this is where Texas Tech is a huge favorite. They're plus 150 in this one. You look at Texas Tech, they've been dominant. They win the conference title. Kansas State was a team that was a surprise this year. The king of the conference, Kansas.
I don't think Kansas State was a surprise. They had 5 starters back from a Sweet 16 team. So, surprised to beat Kansas.
To beat Kansas, yes. And let's talk about Kansas. Injuries did them in. There's no question about that. They had to change their lineup mid-season, go to some freshmen in there. And it's not uncommon for Kansas to have freshmen, Ralph, but normally those freshmen are in there and starting from day one. They had to come in the middle of the season and change that lineup, and there was growing pains. Did they grow enough down the stretch that they can carry this back and, hey, we lost our Big 12 title, but we finally got it back at the end of the season. Let's go ahead and win the Big 12 conference and have that to have on our feather and our cap. What do you see?
Well, they had won the regular season 14 straight years, and I give the team a heck of a lot of credit to be 12-6 and be the number 3 seed. And it's a situation where you play Texas and then you play Texas back to back, and I don't think they have enough to be able to win those back to back games. This is one where I really, out of all the tournaments, I think the chalk is the way to go. Even though you have these teams that just beat each other up on defense, you have all these multiple top 40 Ds. 6 teams are probably top 40 as far as defensive efficiency goes, and they are all very, very physical. But I think Texas Tech, with where they are, having the number 1 defense, getting plenty of scoring down the stretch. Jarrett Culver's taking them to the next level. They have a senior point guard in Mooney. I just think they are heads and shoulders above the best team. I have them at least 4.5 points better than every other team in the conference. They're not used to being here. They've been close, and I think they finally make the next step this year.
Well, I'll tell you, the team that I was going to have as a sleeper, and then they just went to sleep at the end of the season. If you would have talked to me in mid-February, my team was Iowa State.
Yeah, Iowa State and K-State were both there tied and playing as good as anyone in the game. I mean,
what happened to them at the end of the season, Ralph? I mean, they closed the season losing 3 in a row, and 5 of their last 6. And 2 of the losses, just to me, inexcusable. They lost the season ender to Texas Tech. They gave it a good effort, and then they fell short at the end, losing by 7. But how do you lose to West Virginia 90-75, which West Virginia, not a good team at all this year? Did they get caught looking ahead to the Texas Tech game at home that they wanted to, try to ruin their chance to win the Big 12 championship? That's the only thing I can consider there for that loss, because you got to admit, Huggins' team this year was not good for West Virginia. Can they regain it and make a run here in the Big 12 tournament? And I talked to one bookmaker in town, and in Westgate, they took some serious action on Iowa State. Talked to them on our radio show, and I said, is it sharp money, respected money? And he said yes, that they had to move the line significantly on Iowa State.
Well, the thing about Iowa State is they still probably have the best guards, but something just wasn't right there all year. Lindell Whittington was a superstar last year, started every game as a freshman, and he was suspended early this year. He missed 9 games because of injuries and suspensions, and he only made 2 starts all season. So you have a guy who's healthy, who's scoring, and he's your shooting guard, but he's not able to crack the lineup. Be it Halliburton's just playing so well, but I mean, he's still getting his minutes. So, just something with the situation just didn't jive. They had before the Texas Tech game, I was reading the paper there, and they had a players-only meeting. So I was going to play on Texas Tech against Iowa State in that regular season finale, and I backed off because there are many times that a players-only meeting can be a positive. Now, they have a players-only meeting, which is, you can only be emotionally high so many times. You have it, and then you still lose by 7 at home to Texas Tech. I didn't watch the game, so I don't know how the game played out, but to me that's a concern, is you circle the wagons to win the senior game, you don't win that senior game, and now you move forward, and then you have a tough first-round matchup against against Baylor, because you only have 10 teams, so the 4 or 5 seeds are playing. They just don't have the right vibe for me to be able to play them moving forward.
If they can regain their form that they had in January and the first half of February, they can make a deep run here at the price. Kansas State obviously has to be considered. Texas Tech is the team to beat, but I think there's some value, to go against them.
You talked about the Big 12 being such a strong team. You do have some teams though that have 7-11 conference records that really have a lot of pressure on them to get some wins. That's TCU and Oklahoma. So, pressure doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. When you're playing pressure, both of those are playing the opening night. TCU plays Oklahoma State. Oklahoma's playing Virginia. Both of those teams are going to be a favorite, playing with pressure, being on the bubble to try to get to that 20-win mark and try to get to 8-11 in conference play. TCU especially, 11-1 in conference play, played horrible down the stretch, had one good game, their final game, and finally got a win under their belt. But I normally look to fade those bubble teams that are favorites in the opening round game because, again, they know their livelihoods depending on this game.
Moving to the SEC, and it's always Kentucky. This year, Tennessee made some noise with them, and Kentucky's plus 180, and Tennessee plus 200. Very close. They split the regular season meetings. Down the stretch, this Kentucky team was playing as good as anybody in the country. They had 2 losses. They had a 2-point loss at home to LSU, and that was the game that was right before the Tennessee showdown. So it was a team that people hadn't taken LSU for what they were worth yet. They were a young team that won a couple games early. That was back February 12th. And then at the end of the year, March 2nd, they lost to Tennessee in the rematch, and Tennessee took them out behind the woodshed. But Kentucky took them out behind the woodshed earlier in the year. So I look at this Kentucky team. I think that Calipari's got this team peaking at the right time. We always see this with Kentucky getting better in the second half of the season, but I think this year they got there a little bit quicker than they normally do, which gives them an even bigger edge. I don't see somebody upsetting them in this tournament, and Calipari's a guy that does like to keep his foot on the gas and go ahead and win that conference tournament. Whereas we talked about some coaches don't care about it. He is one that does. Well, 3 straight years. Now, remember, Kentucky did lose Reed Travis, their center, the Stanford transfer, and they lost him a few games. They lost him a few games before the Tennessee game. So that was the first road game they played without Reed Travis. So I expected them to lose that game. Travis has been practicing. He has not played yet. And I think that's going to be the telling point here if Kentucky's going to win this tournament. If they bring Travis back to play in this tournament, I think that means, yes, they want to win it. If they're going to let him rest and say, listen, we're going to be a 2 seed, we're going to be a 3 seed at worst if we lose in the first couple games, then that's going to be the case. Now, you have to remember this tournament's in Nashville, the Bridgestone Arena where the Predators play. So Vanderbilt's out of it. I mean, they're horrific. They had a lot of injuries early. Tennessee's going to have a big crowd. Kentucky's only 180 miles away, so 3 hours away from Nashville. So you're going to see that home court edge there. But LSU, the funny thing is, LSU won the SEC and no one's talking about them. Why aren't they talking about them? Well, because Will Wade suspended, and so is Javonte Smart. So you have one of your main players and your coach now with that scandal coming up, not participating in this tournament. So I think that makes them a non-factor that you want to bet them. But I like Auburn. I like the 5 seed here, and the reason is, we talked about LSU being the 1 seed. Well, also on that side of the bracket is probably the worst 4 seed in the history of major college basketball. South Carolina, who went
who played a very difficult non-conference schedule, went 5-8. They were basically out of the tournament at the conference time. Well, they ended up being the number 4 seed, winning a lot of close games, and they will not make the tournament unless they win it. So you have a major conference that's going to send multiple teams, probably 5 or 6 teams to the tournament, and your 4 seed is not going to be in the tournament. So on one side of the bracket, you have LSU with suspended coach and no player, and a 4 seed South Carolina, who is a very poor 4 seed. Then you have Auburn sitting there, and then you look at Auburn the game before. Well, Auburn's going to play the winner of Missouri and Georgia. Another situation where Missouri and Georgia play at 7 o'clock at night. Auburn plays at 2:30 the next day on Thursday. Then they're going to get South Carolina. Then they'll get LSU. And Kentucky and Tennessee will be battling it out on the other side. So for me, I think it's Auburn's a team that's not playing well, that was an AP top 10 early on, has the potential, has the coach in Pearl to be able to get him there, and I'll call for them to win the SEC.
All right, I can't disagree with Auburn, Ralph. They've played well down the stretch, winning 4 straight in 6 of their last 7. The last game, their only loss in there was the Kentucky game, and losing to Kentucky, no fell there, but they did lose to Kentucky 80-53. Lot of gap to close there, but this is a team that could make a run, definitely live. The only one we didn't talk about is the Pac-12, and that is a conference that is a situation with the Pac-12. You look there, it's not the toughest conference. I think that this is one of the weakest conferences that they've had strength-wise, schedule of strength-wise with these guys. So I look at them, and you look at the favorite in the Pac-12, and they played well. They played well all year long, and that is Washington. Can they get the job done, Washington, this year, going through the Pac-12 conference? They have them at plus 250. The second choice is Arizona State at plus 400, and that is a team that, for me, Arizona State, when they bring their A game, they are as good as anybody in the Pac-12. They just haven't been consistent, Ralph. Washington's been there all year, but I don't like Washington at this price. I don't think they come out of here. I think there's going to be an upset. Arizona State, promising. Arizona, first time that we're not talking about Arizona is
an 8 seed.
Is one of the contenders.
A 9 seed, excuse me. They're the 9 seed in the Pac-12 tournament.
Yeah, they did play better down the stretch than they did all season, but do they make any noise? Is this team, can they go any distance? I don't see them making any noise. Oregon, you wonder what they would have been if they didn't have the injury. He just, this team played well without him. Imagine how good this team would have been with him.
And they finished with 4 straight wins, beating Washington handily on the road to finish. So, for them to finish beating Arizona State, beating Arizona, beating Washington State, beating Washington, they're actually my pick in this, as you said. They're a team that Oregon's that sneaky team that Dana Altman's had them there. Last year they lose to Marquette in the second round. The year before they lose to North Carolina in the semifinals, I believe. So having a team that's been there and done that is important. Having a team that knows they beat the top 2 seeds in the last 2 weeks of the game. Having a team that plays as good as defense as anyone. Washington plays the Syracuse zone, and they just haven't clicked. It looked like they were going to be that Syracuse-type team late where it's the shutdown D, and teams have just found weaknesses, and they're having backside issues with that zone. So Oregon right now playing elite defense. Can they get enough scoring? They play such slow tempo. You're going to have low-scoring games with all the games being close, decided in the last couple minutes. So really, it comes down to, I think Washington is in. Now, The rest of the country is hoping Washington wins because then we don't have two Pac-12 teams. Arizona's on the bubble, but Arizona State, excuse me, on the bubble at 21-9. But Ken Pom has them in the 60s, and Ned has them in the 60s. I don't think they're in unless they get to the finals, maybe, and that shoots them up here, winning a couple games. To me, it's Washington and Oregon in the finals in a rematch in a game that's going to be low scoring, and because I don't think Washington's worthy of being the chalk, I would pick Oregon to win it.
All right, you got Oregon. I'm going to go Arizona State for my play in the Pac-12. I think they get the job done. Arizona State, like I said, when this team brings their A game, they're as good as anybody in the Pac-12. The problem is they've been too inconsistent at times. But down the stretch, Arizona State, they did win 5 of their last 6 games. Their only loss was to your team, Oregon, that was on the road. I'll go ahead and make Arizona State my team.
The tournaments here in Vegas at T-Mobile, this is the second year, right? They were at T-Mobile last year. So the players that have been there and done that are experienced, have the new arena feeling, have the Sightline arena. So, something to pay attention to as well. We talked about some things when you're handicapping these conference tournaments, and how many young kids are playing in an NBA-type arena for the first time, or a bigger arena with the different sight lines is something you always have to pay attention to.
All right, good stuff in Handicapper's Corner. We're going to come back in the next section. We're going to take a quick look at some of the games we're going to check out a Wednesday game and a couple games on Thursday that we can talk about, that there are already matchups there that we know. Of course, this week is one of those tough weeks, Ralph, where for us, it's good the first round because you know who's playing who, but you can't do anything until the games are done. And then you got that short turnaround to come back the next day and continue on.
Bad for the podcast, good for the value with those teams playing back-to-back games.
Absolutely. All right, we'll be back. Quick break here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're going to head in and give you some best bets. We're going to double dip you with best bets this week, Ralph and I. We're going to give you 2 for Wednesday's action, and we're going to give you 2 for Thursday. Before we do that, I want to tell you that this segment is brought to you by uwager.eu. Get a 50% sign-up bonus using promo code WT50 when signing up for this offer. This is an exclusive offer to our Wager Talk listeners. Also, it is March Madness time, and we know you're going to be in action. This week's the greatest week of college basketball. Ralph, I like this week better than the opening week of the Big Dance, and I know everybody loves the Big Dance, that Thursday through Sunday, but I'll tell you what, this week's where the excitement is. You've got games every day. You've got teams playing possibly 4 games in 4 days, something that you don't see. Even a couple conferences where they might get a 5th day if they make the run. So we're going to give you some special offer. If you want to buy the rest of college basketball through the Final Four, the price is $275. I'm going to give you a coupon. You can save $100. Get it $175. Everybody else is paying $275, but because you're listening to this podcast, we're going to reward you with a coupon, and that coupon is MM100. That's MM100. You'll get $100 off. Get your complete package through the Final Four, $175. Ralph, let's head to Wednesday. We got some games on Wednesday. You've got a best bet for us. Tell us who it is and what number you're looking at.
I'm going to the CUSA, and the tournaments in San Marcos, and I think right now they're giving North Texas is about 25 miles away. They're giving too much of a home court edge. FIU plays great defense, and FIU is a pressing team that is number 1 or number 2 in the country in steals. It's the type of team no one wants to play. North Texas, not quite the same team they were in the midseason run. FIU getting a basket, game number 664. You're looking at plus 2.5 against North Texas. That game tips off at 9:30 Eastern on Wednesday.
All right, I'm looking at a Wednesday game, and we're going to take a look at the Big Ten action. We're going to look at Rutgers, and we're going to look at Nebraska. Now, obviously, these are two bottom-rung teams, Rutgers at 14 and 16, playing a Nebraska team that, Ralph, it's the second half of the season, you want to talk about the wheels falling off. Now, granted, I don't want to paint a pretty picture here with Rutgers. They not a big winning team down the stretch either. But you look at what Nebraska has done. How are they a favorite in this game? You look down the stretch with them. They won the final game of the season over Iowa. It was an overtime game, 93-91. They lost 4 in a row prior to that. Then they had 2 wins against 2 of the lesser teams, Minnesota, who had been up and down all season, and Northwestern. And then before that, they had a 7-game losing streak. I can't take this team. I'm going to take Rutgers plus the points. This is just one of those things. You got 2 bad teams playing. You know where I'm going? I'm going with the dog, and I'm going to take Nebraska plus the 1.5 on Wednesday for mine. Let's head to Thursday action. You're going to go to the Big Ten. Who do you got on Thursday?
Marco, I'm going to go with a totals play, and it's Indiana, Ohio State under 128.5. There's a 129 and there's a 130. Again, these lines are out early, so there's only a few lines out. So make sure you're paying attention to the line you're getting. Ohio State is getting their suspended player Wesson back, who's their leading scorer and leading rebounder. And, with that, you're now going to have to get some familiarity back on offense. Ohio State plays very slow offensively. And it's, it's a spot where the way Indiana has played offense of late, the line is a little higher than it should be. Ohio State getting their starter back after missing, I believe, 3 games. They have to work at what they're doing. Neither of these teams are in the tournament. They know they have to win to advance. You take care of the basket. You don't press the tempo. Second half, you're going to see a very slow pace. Indiana, Ohio State under the total.
All right, it's all Big Ten action. Ralph, I'm there as well on Thursday. We talked about this team whenever we were breaking down the conferences, and that's Penn State. Penn State's going to be playing Minnesota. They're minus 2 points in this one. I love the way this team has played down the stretch. You lose your first 10 conference games. It would have been really easy for this team just to fold it up and call it a season. They got that win on the road at Northwestern. I was on them that night that they broke their streak, got the comfortable win, beating Northwestern as an underdog, 59-52. And after that, they went down the stretch, winning 5 of their last 6 games. Their only loss, a 4-point loss on the road to Wisconsin.
Easy cover.
An easy cover for them. They were getting a nice number there. I like them here. Minnesota's been up and down all season long. Penn State did lose to Minnesota earlier in the year, only by 1, and that was when they were in the midst of that 10-game opening conference losing streak, Ralph. I'm going to say they get the money here. I think Penn State is going to make a little bit of noise in the Big Ten tournament, and I'm going to take them in the opening round. I'll lay the 2 points with them against Minnesota, and they advance to play another day. That's it for this week's podcast, guys. I want to thank our guest tonight, William Bernanke from CG Analytics. You can follow him at the Moneyline Guy. And, of course, big thanks to Ralph for sitting in the studio with me this week. Dave Cokin was off this week. Big shout-out to Mark Seidel, making sure Ralph and I sound good. and that can be a chore sometimes. And, of course, our guy out in Detroit, Johnny Detroit, he makes sure this podcast is available everywhere on social media. You can also download us on iTunes, listen on Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. And last but not least, we want to thank you, our loyal listeners. Each and every week you tune in to listen to us. We wouldn't have a show without you. We appreciate you for tuning in each week. I'm Marco D'Angelo. Until next week, cash some tickets. And guys, we'll be back next week on Tuesday as well as March Madness begins. No sense doing a podcast on our normal Thursday day when we'll already have that first bracket will be knocked in half. We don't want to do that. We'll be here Tuesday to preview Thursday and Friday's games. Till next week, good luck, guys.